Hello, I'm Lindley Gooden. Welcome to Insurance Innovators webinar, Rebuilding Trust in Insurance, hosted in association with Quadient. Great to have you with us today. Now, Which's monthly consumer insight tracker recently reported that confidence in the insurance industry has dropped from -12 at the end of 2021 to -21 this year, 2024. It might surprise you to hear that banks have a confidence score of +27, a full 48-point difference. So what is going on? Over the next hour, we'll be exploring how insurers can prove their value to policyholders through empathetic and personalized experiences. The question we'll be asking is, how can insurers transform their communications and their experiences in a efficient and scalable way to deliver the services that customers, us lot, really want? Well, luckily we have a fantastic panel to help us with that question and many more today. Let's meet them. First of all, we have Kuldeep Kang. Hello, Kuldeep. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
You're very good. Good to have you with us. Tell us who you are and what you do.
So my name's Quadient Kang and I work for Allianz Insurance. I've been there for over a decade now, working in both personal and commercial lines, and I currently head up the propositions team in claims.
Brilliant. We'll tap into all that as we go. Now, somebody who's been with their current position for a bit longer is Paul Allen. Paul, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Tell us who you are, what you do.
So I'm Paul Allen. I work for Zurich Insurance. Been there for 25 years. Thank you.
What a competition.
Yeah. All of it largely within the marketing function, and I've worked across a number of different marketing touch points from customer and intermediary perspective. I currently head up the marketing strategy and planning team.
Fantastic. Great to have you with us today. And thirdly, last but not least, Nick Emanuel. Great to have you back with us. How are you today?
Brilliant and great and happy to be here today.
Very good to have you. So tell us again, who are you and what do you do?
So my name's Nick Emanuel. I'm a lead solution architect with Quadient. I've been with the company now for about 8 years and I head up the pre-sales team for the UK and Ireland region.
Fantastic. Great to have you all. What a panel. Now, there's lots to talk about over the next hour, and you are also very much part of our panel today. You can send any of your burning questions or comments to us while we're live using the question section on the right-hand side of the webpage. We'll get to them in the last sort of 15 minutes of our session today. So keep on sending them. Let us know what you think. Any thoughts you have, they will drive the last part of our discussion today. But let's start out by exploring the keys behind building a trusting customer relationship. We'll look at the current gaps in communication and also a range of strategies to address them. We'll kick us off. First of all, how has the insurer-customer relationship, do you believe, changed over the last few years?
Well, it's changed in a way where we moved away from a one-size-fits-all approach to providing customers with a more bespoke, customized service that's tailored towards their needs. Yeah. Now, technology has been a key enabler for that because we can deal with customers and respond to them much quicker, much faster, and be more proactive. However, that human in the loop, that remains critical because when it comes to a sensitive situation, you need that emotional intelligence, which a person needs to provide. And that's what helps strengthen that relationship with customers and lead to loyalty.
Yeah, most people watching us today will be going through this exact process and have been for a few years now. How do we get the balance right? I mean, one follow-up to the first question, which is, yes, it's changed so much. Has it got better?
It has got better.
Good.
Because instead of putting all customers through the same processes and providing them with the same service, we're actually amending and tailoring towards their needs and wants. Yeah. So it's more like, instead of like when I first started in our industry over 10 years ago, we used to give scripts. Yeah. You know, we're moving away from things like that. Even the targets we're setting, it's more around, all right, how do you remove that failure demand? How do you deal with what that customer needs, what matters to them? That's key.
Difficulty is, as the Which report, Paul, showed us, is that there is a drop in sort of the trust with relationships with insurers. I wonder, look, I mean, has the trust been re-established? Do we need to re-establish a trust? Was it there in the first place? Where kind of are we on the insurance scale?
And it's a really tough question, and largely due to sort of, I suppose, the relationship the customer has with insurance. It's arguably a begrudged purchase. So I'm not sure there has ever been 100% trust in the industry, given 50% of people don't make a claim. So you're just paying your money on a monthly basis to may or may not use the product that you've bought. I guess it's about using those touch points, those opportunities to try and build relationships and meaningful relationships when you do have that interaction with those customers. So when you do make a claim or you do engage, it is a meaningful one, and it's two-way. I think the insurance industry is probably historically has been sort of grouped in with under the financial services banner. Yeah. So you had banks in there who obviously went through the financial crisis a number of years ago. I was really surprised to see the difference in the Which report and how banks have sort of just re-established themselves and actually the trouble that insurers are perceived to see. So there is absolutely work to do.
Yeah.
One of the other challenges is that people buy through an intermediary. So actually, a number of customers think their insurer is their broker. So actually, from an insurance perspective, you've got the dilution of messages. So it goes into a broker through to the customer, and we're asking them to pass on those messages and those experiences. So it is quite difficult. The trigger point, I think, in the sort of perhaps where the trust has swung, it will have been COVID. And the spotlight that was really put on those policies at the time, looking at the small print, looking at the finer detail within those policies, what really is covered, things like business interruption suddenly coming right up into the public spotlight, and people not being able to claim when they thought they were able to.
Look, I mean, it's one report. It's Which, very reputable, know their stuff, and they are about consumers. I used to work with them myself. They are very good at what they do. Yep. It is just one piece of research, but there are two things that can happen, aren't there? Yes, COVID. Yes, a sudden incident that causes a problem and the relationship breaks down, or it can be that insurance just isn't keeping up.
Yep.
That can also be an issue. Maybe we'll sort of drill into that later on. But Nick, what do you feel about this? Do you feel that perhaps insurance is falling short when it comes to customer communications? Do you think there could be anything else? What are your feelings?
And it's a really interesting point. I think certainly in the experience I've had with talking to insurance companies, there are probably maybe 5 key areas where we discuss issues, we discuss problems. The first is around the whole point of digitization. So there's still a range of insurance companies still using print as the primary medium to communicate with their customers and missing out on that more digital self-service capability that is out there. Second area is personalization. There's a lot of blanket communication, blanket messaging going out in those comms, which really it almost goes blah, 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 blah when I read it, because relevancy is not there for me as a customer when I'm looking at that information. I think the next key area where there's discussion is around speed of change. Yeah. So again, when we think about things like consumer duty, when we think about the regulatory changes that are prominent within, the structures they have for developing those communications mean it's very slow to affect change quickly. And it's all about speed. Customers, we're in a now society. People want answers now to their questions. And then you move on to the area of transparency, which we kind of touched on earlier, where, okay, how do we present that information in a way that's clear so that when I go and execute an insurance company, a policy rather, I'm not sat there wondering why suddenly there's this magical fee I've got to pay here or this charge. How do we get that information in a format that's clear, easy to discern? And then the final area is really in the area of being proactive. Yeah. How can insurance companies shift from being reactive, i.e. customer phoning, something's gone wrong, help me, to based on on the data and understanding of that information, being able to be proactively let them know about changes or policies programs that might be relevant for them.
So interestingly, Paul, you rightly said COVID and events like that so that's a sudden event. Nick, you're talking about falling behind. I'm going to throw it cool dip to you to be our independent referee. which is best? Actually, it's a combination of both, obviously. Do you have any thoughts, having listened to Paul in terms of the sudden event and Nick in terms of the way communications can fall behind? Any initial thoughts from you on that?
I think as an industry, we haven't been as quick as the banking industry when it comes to leveraging technology. I mean, when it comes to mobile banking apps, those were introduced about 10 years ago. Yeah. I mean, when it comes to insurance, if you think about it, who has the apps? We've done the apps, but is that the right thing for our industry? Question mark.
And that whole wallet thing as it was, which is now much more advanced. Those things are very interesting. So the amalgamation of being part of a super app is very interesting. But of course there are regulations, and it's not what we came here to talk about today. But it is interesting. It's a really good one. Gen Z. I say Gen Z. I said this outside as well before we came on today. Hey, Gen Z. How big an issue is Gen Z and the way they communicate, the way they interact? Is that a thing, Paul?
To a certain extent, sort of, I suppose, pigeonholing and almost saying that Gen Z has its own needs, or different sort of age spectrums have their own needs and requirements. I think the reality is that other industries are moving at such a different pace, and the reality is, well, why isn't insurance doing it at that speed? If you look at Domino's, Monzo, Octopus Energy, you know where your pizza is, whether it's in the oven or it's moved to being on the delivery driver. The point is that actually, from a service perspective, and again probably triggered by COVID and fast-tracked quite a lot, the insurance industry is no longer competing against its peers in other insurers. Even if you're right down the bottom and you're best of the bottom, and that's not the place to be. We see the Amazons of the world. People are used to getting this much better, much slicker, easy way of working and interacting with a provider and a supplier. So the bar is definitely raised, but I think, in terms of the Gen Z question, I think the point is really more about providing customer choice. So people will still want to use live chat, they'll want to email, they will want a phone, they may well want to write a letter. And the reality is that one day they might want to do one and the next day they want to do the other. So it's, how does the insurance company ensure that journey is all joined up? You're not repeating yourself and saying the same things in an email that you've had to then say when someone picks up the phone and answers you. Just
bringing that together, it sounds though we like your delivery.
Yeah.
We do want to know.
Yeah.
The way we want to know might vary, but we do want to know. So the communication between insurers and people perhaps needs to be better. Nick, leading question?
Oh no, absolutely. I think it's about how do the insurance companies increase that emotional resonance of those communications.
And really reach out.
So that when I read it, I'm seeing everything that's relevant to my relationship with the insurance company. And so that's super key in this current day and age in terms of engendering trust with those customers, because you get that sense of, you know me and you know my requirements, you know my situation, and you are doing the best for me. You know?
It's always been that case. I mean, it's always been a question for the last 10 years, 15 years, is how can we be part of people's lives more as insurers? And it's not easy to crack, and it hasn't been cracked yet in some ways. But it is interesting. Perhaps that is why this Which report, and many more like it, I'm sure, show a discrepancy, because banks are much more relevant, apparently relevant in our lives, whereas insurers are a renewal, a grudge, possibly a claim, which is not easy. So there's a lot more to fight against. But when this needs to happen really is with vulnerable customers, Kuldeep.
Yes.
So how do we get our ducks in a row, get ourselves ready to work really well with people who are in need, identify them, and then work with them?
Well, the first thing is actually identifying your vulnerable customers. Vulnerability could be long-term, could be short-term, permanent, not permanent. That's the first step, identifying, a customer and if they are vulnerable or not. And there's technology out there to help you with this. I mean, data analytics could...
You have to identify what vulnerable means as well, don't you?
Yeah. And it can mean different things to different people. So it's, there's a whole host of things that come under the umbrella of vulnerability. Yeah. And it's A, identifying it, B, recognizing what that vulnerable customer's needs are at that time. That's another important thing. So the technology piece is key, using data analytics to find patterns that could indicate a customer is vulnerable or not. You could find they're delaying payments or they're downgrading their policies. So there's a whole host of behaviors that your data can show you to demonstrate that customer might be vulnerable. Yeah. The second piece is your people. It's really, really important that your people are trained and educated on picking up on cues. So it might be a customer's tone of voice that would let they know that they're vulnerable. So that's going to be very key. So they can then tailor their services to that customer.
Absolutely, and we will talk about a helpful score that Paul and the team have come up with, the company's come up with in the next section, I think. But it's really interesting. So wait for that. It's really interesting the way you can actually start to work out how good your people are and how important that could be to the business. But before we do close up this section, Nick, Kuldeep talked about data. How important and why is it so important right now and into the future that your data is accessible across departments, that you finally crack that nut? Because, we have legacy systems, we have old data, white envelopes still make their way through the post. How do we get that right?
I think it's super important. To give you an example, just recently I had to update my insurance policy, and I had a lovely conversation with the call center. They went through the policy and said, "Is this all okay?" I said, "Great, thank you." A couple of days later, the policy turns up in the post, and my name is spelt correctly on the policy, but then there's a marketing flyer in there, and my name is totally misspelt on that, and it just shows a disparate or disconnection between the data sources they have used. They don't have a single version of who I am within their organization. Yeah. And I think if you've got that disconnect, that's just one example, it makes it really difficult for you to be able to look at data, to gain information, to gain insight, to then be proactive in the way that you communicate with customers if you're coming from different versions of that data in disparate sources.
As a customer, remind us of how you felt when you saw that they'd added an extra M and an extra L.
So for me, I have a thing about the way my Emmanuel is spelled. We spell it Emanuel. If I see double L's or E's on the end, double M's, it's a thing for me. It's like, really, you should know how to spell my name.
And it made you feel what, like a data point?
It is. It makes you feel less of a person who they want to cultivate a relationship with, and more you're a statistic.
Yeah.
Here's the disparate information we have about you. There you go.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it.
And Paul, it wasn't your team, but that's a lesson that all people in the marketing side, particularly when it's quite sensitive when you reach out to a customer. This reaching out is an issue. You've got to be so careful, and so kind of the positivity has to come through in some way.
It's the impact that email or that letter through the post has, and that's fundamentally starts with getting the name of the customer right, but it's also what's the letter asking me to do? Is it clear? You're a complicated industry that needs to explain things in simple terms, and so it's getting that balance right. And we'll talk about tone of voice a bit later.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, great start. So we've established the first steps towards improving those all-important insurer-customer relationships. Now let's talk about the potential of new technologies in transforming communications and everything that your human workforce works with too. Now, let's talk about, I'm going to introduce a phrase which I wouldn't normally use. How can emotional AI, or at least sentiment analysis, help us to really start to engage, to understand customers, to make this relationship better?
I think, first of all, we have to, and we were talking about this earlier, we have to change the perception of AI. It is a tool.
Yeah.
It's not a person. It's not a real thing. It is a tool, and it's about looking at it with that lens to see how it can help us in our day-to-day lives in whatever way that may be. So to give you an example, I know when I'm writing an email, sometimes I will write an email, and I'm sure we may have all been in that situation. When you read it, you think, oh, that sounds a little heavier than I want it to, because you have in your mind that context of where or how that information should be being perceived. And then I'll spend the next 10 minutes changing words to try and tone it down or change the sentiment so that it's nearer to the context that I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And now if you look at insurance companies and say a call center representative who's talking to your point earlier, talking to a customer, they've identified they're upset, they're distressed. They have that context, as a human person of what a response should be to that person. So again, they can write something, but then having AI as a tool that you can then look at it and say, have I matched the context? Have I, tuned this piece of response that's appropriate to the context I understand with this customer, that's going to be soothing, reassuring, or whatever it may be. Yeah. And so these are the areas where I think, this is the lens that we need to be looking at, how we incorporate AI into all these processes to add benefit.
It's a labor-intensive process. You just explained it. We've all been there to go and change that. There's a typo. There's a spelling mistake. I've left a comma out. It's so labor-intensive. You wrap yourself up in knots. So where does the human come in, if you like, to check the AI is working out?
Well, by being part of that process, and I think you touched onto it earlier, a human has to be a part of that process to sanity check it.
Yeah. What do you think, Kuldeep?
So Everything you're saying I agree with. You do need that human in the loop. I mean, when it comes to AI and emotion, sentiment analysis, you could have a customer that's talking to you on a chatbot, but you could sense that they're getting frustrated or upset. You need to take them off that channel and then speak to them. That's probably the best route to go by. So it's, helpful to an extent, but you do need that human interaction.
Yeah. You've got to be able to hit the escape button and get what you want to get done. Complicated, isn't it? And ultimately, we want that. We want that outcome, don't we? That's if you keep your eye on the prize as to what the customer wants, Paul. Then I suppose you're going to always navigate down in your design of your systems. You're going to navigate down to the right place.
Yeah, and I think it's about sort of that empathetic understanding as well. I mean, the industry is definitely changing. It's changing for the better, and all of the technologies that allow us to be able to do that. The metrics are much different to how they were sort of 5-10 years ago. We're moving away from it being about call and service numbers. It's not a target. You must answer 30 phone calls a day. It's making sure that when you talk to a customer, you get what they want right the first time. And there are lots of sort of, I suppose, tools to bring that through. We're currently rolling out empathy training to our frontline staff. So whether they're answering the phones to a life insurance customer or to a small business owner, we're actually training to understand, and your point called it about the sort of the sentiment of the call. And what that allows us to do is to use TNPS, so not the traditional metric which we do use, but the helpfulness of person. So we're able to understand actually has that improved, or is the customer leaving that call or that conversation or that interaction with us in a positive light. And I suppose the other part to it is that actually lots of organisations, not necessarily just within the insurance industry, spend a lot of their time on their brand, what they look like, their visual identity, but they don't necessarily spend and invest in what they sound like and the tone of voice.
But your people are your brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Helpfulness is interesting because it's the helpful score that I mentioned earlier on. I think it's really interesting, and it's so important to put that into the mix. If you want humans involved in the augmentation process with things like AI, is helpful the best score? Do you think because helpful means that your customer support might have to work really, really hard, but actually what you want is the best outcome, I guess.
Yeah, and ultimately you want a customer to almost go away and then be an advocate and pass on that great message. But you obviously need, as you've just touched on, the people to be behind it, and the tone of voice sets absolutely everything. Because, and you touched on sort of having scripts in the past and things like that. Actually, the AI tool or an AI tool enables us to be able to set tone of voice parameters. You can personalize based on that individual conversation. You can be formal. You can be more relaxed. You can talk as a certain type of individual. And I think in an industry full of legalese and jargon, it's got to change, and it's got to make it much more comfortable for the customer.
In some ways, what we're doing is replacing the formal push-out script that there was in years gone by to "Hello, how are you?" And then the conversation starts. Nick, what about the operational keys to making all this work? Because yes, we've got people, we've got the technologies, we've got the communication with the external, world, the customers that we need to always work with. How do you get all that together and start to step in the right direction?
Really interesting point. I think it's about understanding. So a great quote I heard a little while back I think it was Einstein, who said, "If you give me an hour to come up to solve a problem, I will spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes on the solution." And I think, one of the key perspectives or thought processes that companies have to go through is, do we truly understand why we're not able to be responsive in terms of the communications we send out? Do we know why we're not able to personalize our communications? Do we know? If you understand the reasons why, then when you are starting to employ new technologies, you can be asking the right questions of, does it achieve overcoming this problem which we've identified? And I think that is probably one of the key things to be held front and center in people's minds when they're looking at how do we address the problem, is understanding the problem and all the things that are actually leading to the results that you're seeing.
And that piece of research we quoted at the top, we've spoken about it more than I expected to, but it is interesting. It's an interesting thread going through that banking is doing better in terms of that report. Perhaps that front-footedness, the positivity, the way that customers are engaged has been at the heart of that, because banking's had its tough times too, and yet look at that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's, again, a lot of companies are talking about being customer-centric, customer first, but that's almost a tagline. It's when you're really thinking that to the point of, okay, in terms of the way we organize, the way we're structured, the way, we have silos of data all over the place, how are we being customer-centric in the way we approach accessing that information, presenting it in a way that we have a single view of what a customer looks like, utilizing technologies that then allow us to, through insights, to be able to make sure that every communication we send out has the appropriate context, so that the wording is fit for purpose to address, is this an apology? Are we trying to, make them feel reassured? Whatever the actual messaging is supposed to be.
And you're reducing the problem, and you're spending much more time on the solution. You're starting to think about, you're flipping that round in some ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not about how do we achieve this? We've now got solutions that allow us. Now, how do we make it better? How do we, now that we've got the right tools, in play, how can we now, effectively use that to help us with these goals of being more customer-centric?
Yeah. In a few minutes, we'll talk about inclusive design with Paul, and we'll start that conversation. But for now, Kuldeep, let's continue this and try and work out how the design process goes. When you fit the humans in, you've got the nice combination of AI or other tools and humans. First of all, how do you get the design right? How do you approach that?
I think when it comes to the design, Apple's done this really, really well. When it comes to the whole user experience, it's just got to be easy and simple. That's what people want. Our customers want easy, like you touched on. There can be a lot of corporate jargon in some of our comms. They just want to be able to, for us to get to the point. I mean, as part of what we've done as part of Consumer Duty is we've actually tested all our communication to make sure it's really clear to customers where we need them to make a decision. So it's being very simple, being very clear. And technology can aid you, but it is, technology could be the solution, but it's getting that balance between digital and personal, and the focus needs to be on personal.
Yeah. Something with Apple, and yes, I'm an Apple user. There's always been, price aside, there's always been something pleasing.
Yeah.
And if you look at those, it's an interesting textural thing. If you look at the way you interact with that particular brand, the unwrapping, all those things, that is pleasing. It gives you something, an instant hit of probably dopamine.
You stick with them as well. I've been an Apple customer for 10 years because I keep upgrading my phone, but it's easy to, if you remember before 10 years ago when you used to upgrade your phone.
That's right.
It was a faff. You lose your picture. You don't move everything from that phone onto the new one. Apple just makes it so much easier.
And it's really, to your point, I think, and that's a great example, they really were able to identify what are the painful experiences of moving from one phone to the other? What are the painful experiences of using a phone, and focusing on, because that's a customer-centric view, how do we make that easier? And then the solution finds itself when you've got that approach.
It's really interesting. It's completely crossing over to the retail space, but it is interesting because the reaction that you have is a positive one. So it's and you kind of feel you spent your money in the right place. Now that may not always be the case, but it's really interesting to do that. Final thing, how do we bring those new technologies in so that we can make sure that the customer service person is at the heart of this process in some way? How can we get customer service with the humans to be a really fundamental part of what we do as insurers?
I think when it comes to our people, it's them actually being customer-centric. We've touched on that. Them thinking about, okay, what matters to this customer at this moment in time? I mean, if you think about claims, for example, when things go wrong for a customer, claims is the moment of truth. Okay, that's where you put your money where your mouth is. The customers paid premiums for so many years, and they've now got an issue, and they need you to be there. And it's at that point where your people need to really think about, okay, well, what is it that we need to do for this specific customer to make this journey, painful journey, because we've all been there where we've had to pay claimant. It's not an easy experience, and it's how do you make that experience painless as possible for that customer and make it more delightful? You want to put not just put them back in the same position as they was before the loss happened, but, you know, take them through and show them that, you know, we're here for you. You want them to stick with you. If they have a bad experience, they'll go to someone else.
Yeah.
You know?
Everything we talked about could be wrapped into empathy.
Yeah.
And in terms of really clear communication, in terms of really listening and then acting on
Yep.
what you're learning. A final thing before we move on to the next section, Nick, one part we haven't really talked about is how the technology can get the experience of your people on the front end back into the business.
Right.
So just a very, very brief thought on how important it is to listen to those guys who are dealing with customers every day. They're really busy. They won't have a lot of time to contribute, but they have contributions to make.
I think part of addressing this is really looking at, do we actually understand what a customer journey looks like? You know, what are there, do we have a visual representation of what all those touch points?
Yeah.
Do we have any kind of feel on how successful or successful we are at addressing those concerns at that point? So again, I think starting right at the top, being able to map those journeys, show on those maps what are the communications or examples of the communications we're sending out at that moment in time, and then augmenting that with real-time information from core solutions, where, you know, NPS scores or whatever metrics that validates whether that touch point is actually a good touch point or not. And I think once you understand that high-level picture, then you're in a better position to then understand the actions you need to take to improve those experiences along that customer journey.
Brilliant. Let's optimize support, shall we? We are about 15 minutes away from your questions, so please keep sending them in. On the right-hand side of the webpage, we need to hear from you. You are going to drive that last part. Doesn't matter what the question is, within our bounds, let us know what you think, what your questions are. So we explored current customer pain points, changing expectations, and the rise of AI and new tech. Now let's look to the future. How can insurers restore faith in the industry and deliver genuinely personalized experiences throughout the customer journey? Well, Paul, tell us what you think inclusive design means and how that can really help with everything we've been talking about, improving that insurance relationship, the journey, all that stuff.
Thank you. And it sounds obvious, but including the customer in the conversation and the dialogue in the first place is probably fundamental to it. Very rare that you get the opportunity to have an absolute clean slate and build from a bottom up. You'd normally be adapting or building or using existing systems. So it's about how you represent the customer in all of those meetings and all of those conversations. I mean, we use Apple and Amazon as examples, but Amazon have a spare chair in every meeting to represent the customer. So
do they?
They do.
Right.
And I guess the idea is just to keep it forefront, and that the whole point is, I suppose, that there are things being designed that you forget the customer, and you're getting it done to meet a deadline, to meet a budget, and what have you. So as simple and basic as it sounds, it's important to make sure that they're included. I guess you've got to also, and we talked about vulnerability, there are so many customers out there that can't access the information they need that you are providing. So we see something like 200,000 people on our website a month that actually will find it difficult to find. They'll be using screen readers, etc. So you've got to make sure that actually it's not just you're not just doing the basics. You're getting everything right for every type of customer. This should already be the norm, I guess. But again, it's been touched on. But Consumer Duty is a catalyst for it. Exactly as you've said, there's been multiple customer centricity. Put the customer at the heart of what you do. All of those diagrams with them sitting at the middle. But the reality is that Consumer Duty is allowed is probably not the right word. Has caused
Sure. Yeah.
Insurance companies to test the key documentation at moments of truth when we really want them to act and do something. So and again, you touched on the journey mapping, but actually this whole journey mapping of that customer sort of touch points in terms of the communications. What do I receive when I join the organisation? What do I receive when I make a claim? What are my options at this point? So the flow chart, actually seeing it from its end-to-end entirety is really important, because I think lots of people see things of their own bit. I'm responsible for this bit.
That's right.
Oh, that's done brilliantly, but how does that connect with the next stage and the next interaction.
Internally, operationally, it sounds like it's the motivator that we've been looking for. It's the way that everyone feels included as well as having to be included. So you kind of, when people have a sight of things above their pay grade, actually, that's really powerful. It's really good for the people within the business to understand that they are part of it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I think it's also that, when more of the organization are aware of the implications of their actions on that customer journey, when there is that single sort of point of truth of that journey, then they're more mindful to the fact that, okay, what seems like a simple change, and like you said, in my blinkered world, actually the effect that's going to have is customers are not going to be able to understand this, or they're going to get wrong information or whatever, and now they get a better feel for the impact of those changes, and that can only be a benefit to any organization.
It's going to help you with your job as well. You know where to spend your time, what your effort needs to be. You also then know where to be efficient because you can see where it's going to. Does that sound reasonable to you as well?
Yeah, I was just saying the value add is that value add activity. That's where you want to channel most of your time and energy towards.
Yeah.
The value added point, I think, is really powerful in this whole conversation and debate. So if you were to take the conversation away from product and price, that's the thing that puts people off. What else is included when I purchase this product? Is it support services? Is it well-being hubs? Is it legal support? There are so many more things, and I think that's the role of the insurer to actually perhaps start to utilise those as reasons to go and talk and have those conversations.
Exactly, because insurance is an intangible product.
Exactly.
And those add-ons is what makes it more tangible. That's
Absolutely,
the experience
totally
you
agree.
want to give to your customers.
Absolutely. And one of those great value adds would be having a message saying storms are coming to your area. Lock up. Predict and prevent is where we're at. So, how powerful could that be for all of this that we're talking about, but the customer relationship certainly included?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for insurers to get on the front foot. That is what customers are looking for. They want to avoid the claim to begin with. And there's a lot of technology out there that can enable this. So geospatial, for example, could help you visualize a weather event before it actually happens. And, if you, as an insurance company, you have that information, get in contact with your customers, a motor fleet customer, that there's a flood happening, you want to warn them, move your vehicles. That's the type of service that, we should be all providing our customers. They should be avoiding that loss to begin with.
And now you're in their lives. And this is not just personal customers, it's commercial customers.
It's commercial customers.
Absolutely. And so are we there yet?
We are getting there. We're definitely we're a long way from where we were 10 years ago. So we've still got a way to go, but we're getting there.
But perhaps that's something that we need to make sure that customers know about now.
Yeah, and it's absolutely the personalisation, and it's sort of the role the insurers play, because you sort of on one hand go, well, actually, yes, the insurer could tell me that the weather's coming. The flip side is that would I take that information from an insurer, or do I get that from the news? Do I get that from other sources? And so it's the balance of the role. What is the role of the insurer to sort of prevent and engage versus, well, actually, could an account handler pick up the phone and talk to that customer and go, is everything all right? And so you sort of make it about the insurance contract and relationship rather than necessarily telling them things that they probably can get from other places.
Right. So that relevancy of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Being a useful hub. I mean, this is an interesting role for insurance in the future, and we don't want to get too philosophical, but actually where perhaps the trust has been lost in the last few years, according to that report, being a really reliable, no-nonsense place to have the definitive piece of information, that could be good. It puts some work on your shoulder.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and there's no reason, and back to my point earlier, that other organisations and industries have moved on. We should be past the point of getting the basics right. We should be taking it to the next level.
And one final thing, the entire life cycle. We're talking about the entire customer journey, Paul. So how do we make sure that we're there throughout, at the right times, at the right place?
Yeah, and I think, your key touch point is your claims process. That's ultimately what you're buying. But the impact you have from your onboarding communications as well. That sets the tone for how you feel about things going forwards. People want a really sort of personalised approach, and I've talked about Domino's. Tell them what I'm going to have for dinner later. But that whole you want that from a claims journey. Who's handling it? Where am I on the process? What information do you need from me? How long is it going to take? How do I get in contact with you? And ultimately, back to that point of it being a begrudged purchase, don't make me work hard for it. I'm giving you money. I haven't
received anything
in return, and now you're expecting me to either provide you with information, which sometimes is obviously needed, but don't make me have to dig through things that I ultimately, you've got all of that information in the first place. And I really think the role that people play and the employees play in this is not a marketing initiative going, oh, we've come up with something in the marketing department, now we're going to try it and see what happens. This has to have top down, left and right support. Everyone needs to be behind it. And it is about listening, it's about adapting and really being two-way in that dialogue and that
and also accepting that perhaps in the current times money is tight and insurers are taking part of that, but then there's protection involved. But understanding what customers think of insurance is a place to start. And then you reach out in these great positive ways we talked about and start to really get the data right, the communications right. You start to send out positive messages, not just kind of defensive ones or ones on a white envelope
or reactive ones.
So it's really interesting. Nick, this is the hardest question of the entire thing. How do we produce a successful customer-centric insurance
I have a magic wand here, and
I
think again, it's about. I think it's at data. We live in a very data-centric world. Everything is about information. So I think it's about understanding how we go about turning the vast amount of information that insurance companies have about us as people. How do we convert that data into information, that information into insight, and then use that insight to drive how we actually communicate with those customers? And again, it's about things like standardizing your platforms. So you haven't got this situation of, different technology and teams sending out your emails versus your print versus your, et cetera, where change from a regulatory point of view becomes slow to do because you've got to spin up a project to make sure that we've correctly made that change across those silos and tying up your IT teams in just staying compliant, let alone having a more customer-centric view to say, how do we now start working in personalization? And again, it's about, when we standardize that platform, having a single platform that's truly omni-channel, that allows you to have those two-way communications with your customers, allowing you to adopt digital, really adopt digital and benefits of digital as part of that conversation, where they feel part of going on that journey with you.
And in control. This is a tough thing to have to claim. So 100%. To feel control. Paul, any thoughts from you as well in terms of that clear conversation that needs to happen? It needs to happen. What could we do now in terms of either mindset or some organizational piece to make sure that we're all singing from the same song sheet?
I think it's to do with the relationship and this sort of challenge that an insurance product has in terms of the regular engagement. The banking point is everyone will go onto their banking app almost every day. So you are the customer is automatically looking to them for information. Actually, I need this now, insurance. I need it quickly. I need it to hand.
Help me.
And exactly. But what are those touch points that aren't regulatory, that aren't caused by a claim, that builds that relationship over time, I think is important.
Almost there, almost to audience questions. Final question to you, Kuldip. Is there a single change or a set of changes you think in communications that will change the game? What's next?
I think what's next is we're still getting there with the right balance between digital and human. But I think we're going to get better and more effective where we will have, the personal side as the focus whilst using the right digital solutions. That's an important thing as well, not driving all your customers down a certain route.
Absolutely.
And you touched on it, Paul, around, there's different, communication channels, and it's being able to adapt to those different ones. If a customer wants to talk to us over the phone, if it's a chatbot, if it's email, whatever that is, being able to maneuver across those different channels, and, driving the customers even to the right channel, as I said when we spoke about the chatbot.
Based on their sentiment, based on what they're feeling, based on their behaviour and what that tells you.
Where they're at, what time they might be on holiday, abroad, you've got to work around their timings and schedules.
We consumers are busy. We're just really busy. Okay, we've covered lots of important issues in our short time together so far. Hope that you found the insights from our panel useful. We've certainly covered a lot of ground. Now it's time to hear directly from you. Thanks for sending in your questions. We will get to them in just a second. Before we do, fingers at the ready. If you can, take a very brief moment to rate today's webinar so far. You should see a link to the feedback form, which is just below the video player on your webpage. Your response is completely confidential, but really useful so we can keep on improving and talking about the stuff that you want to hear about. Okay, question time. Now, we haven't seen these questions yet. We will try to answer as many as we can. Let's go to my camera there. We've got a screen with some questions coming through. Where in the insurance process do trust issues stem from? For example, claims or from the initial policy purchase? I'm going to throw this around. It's a tough one. Because it could be from multiple places. But thanks for the question. Where in the insurance process do trust issues stem from? Kuldeep, kick us off.
I think we touched on claims because that is the moment of truth for customers. And I think we spoke about it before this session, actually. If you have, a bad experience, whether it's with an insurance company or any, organization, if it's a good experience, you tell one person. If it's a bad experience, you go and tell 7. So that's where it does stem from. And because people aren't claiming every day, you might claim once every 10 or 20 years. You've been paying for your insurance premiums every month, every year. And so for customers, it's like, well, that was the moment of truth. That's when I needed you. And you made it a painful process. That's where it can stem from. So
do we already have quite a lot of stored up tension with our insurer that, we're just waiting to unleash?
I think the word trust is probably quite an interesting one because it's sort of, it suggests you're pulling the wool over my eyes, you're cheating me. So insurers are not setting out to do that by its very nature. Price rises will naturally probably upset people, quite understandably. So, and would you then answer that
I've been
question?
upset, I can tell you, but I've worked my way around it. But it's taken time.
Exactly. So it's when you then get to the claims point, it's, are you going to pay my claim or are you not going to pay my claim? So there is an element of jeopardy in this whole journey as well. So you're coupling things from the it's too expensive. I don't know if I need this. I don't know whether you're going to pay for it, and I might not ever use it. It's a combination of all those things.
The nature of the business has always been there. The nature of that business is always there. So the trust comes from being absolutely forthright with people, straightforward, authentic, and that can help to open. What do you think, Nick?
And again, I think the actual claim process is you manifest where you weren't clear in terms of the policy, in terms of the way information was laid out to them, in terms of presenting that in a way that they could discern everything by the way of charges that would be involved if there's a claim, etc. And so that's the point I think where a lot of customers will be then like, oh my goodness, we're doing this, and now you're telling me I've got to pay this extra that, and that I wasn't aware of that when I took out the policy, etc. So again, it just goes to that, how do insurance companies go about making sure that everything is as transparent as possible? When I pick up that policy document, I read it and it reads like reading a 10-year-old's writing as opposed to sort of insure speak.
Insure speak, absolutely, and that reduces the jeopardy.
Well, there are very few products that a consumer sort of buys on a day-to-day basis that have a 50-page document explaining what is and what isn't part of what you've just bought. So there's a natural assumption: I'm giving you money, I will get back from you what I need, and that's the the sort of the nervousness, I guess.
Yeah, if I want a book, I'll go to the bookshop. Okay. Next question. Super interesting session. Thanks to you. What role can sustainability, ESG and DE&I play in building trust and providing personalized solutions and experiences? Does it have a role in this industry? Set by Chris Holmes. Thanks, Chris, for that question. That's a really good question, because actually one thing that we haven't talked about today, and perhaps is not talked about every day, is who you are as a business and what you care about, whether you care about the same things as as your customer does. What do you think about that, Kuldeep? I mean, to be visibly and genuinely, it has to be genuine, otherwise you fall down, genuinely caring about the things that I care about.
Yeah, I think it comes down to the design of like your organization, the culture you have, the ethos that you have. I think all of that is really, really important. And sustainability, ESG, and diversity and inclusion, they're all important, elements to that. If you think of like your customers, the makeup of your customers, they are, female, male. Like you got diversity there.
That's right.
You need that in your workforce as well, because they are the ones designing those experiences and those solutions. Yeah. So it's a very good point. So the role that I think the industry is doing a massive push on this in the last few years.
Absolutely. And you can't get investment without being part of it, without these things happening. But at the same time, people don't know about it.
Yeah. There is more we could do to shout about it.
And actually, it will always wrap into something that's very corporate if you start talking about it. So it's a very delicate balance, Paul.
Yeah, and I think customers like to see themselves represented in their organisation when they're making a purchase for any product. Yeah. They have that. They sort of feel comfortable. They feel warm. They believe in their values and their behaviours. And so, how you behave, how you operate, how you educate is really important. And that's the thing that I think we're on a massive journey as an industry. Some of this is very easy to do, some of this is very difficult to do, some of this is about how we work with some of our big corporate customers and sort of help them start to transition their own journeys with this as well, and taking learnings from us as an organisation. So I think it absolutely has a role, and then we need to sort of keep that momentum going.
Yeah, and of course using social media, not that I'm a great advocate of that in some ways, but using the influence of individuals on social media is becoming an incredibly powerful way of people believing you.
Yeah. I think people believe what you believe. People buy your product because they believe in your ethos, your company philosophy. Yeah. That's what ties people in. Yeah. But that to me is like half the problem. So totally agree to your point. It's about having that ethos and having that diversity and having all that. But then you need to be able to manifest that in the way you communicate. You've got to be able to reflect that feeling, that ethos in the way you communicate with your customers, in the way you talk to them, the language that you use to them. So it's about having the ethos, but also having the technology to be able to say, and make that clear and translate it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
From a pure marketing angle, customer testimonials, advocacy, all of that really helps to tell the story.
Absolutely. Let's keep on going. How are you measuring success in building trust? Any specific KPIs or anything that you're looking at? Now, we did hear from Paul earlier on about the helpfulness score, the KPI that's really interesting. How helpful are your people when you deal with customers? It's a complex blancmange I'd love to hear about, but I don't want to give the game away. Just remind us of what that is and why it's important.
It's sort of, I guess, drawn from the usual TMPS touch point of how likely are you to recommend us as an organisation. But when we've then brought in the empathy training, and we've taken a number of our staff through very, very detailed and lengthy training to ensure that they're picking up on literally the voices on the phone or the emails as they come in. We absolutely needed a measurement to be able to go, well, how is this having an effect and an impact? So yes, we get a response that says we're more likely to recommend you. Absolutely brilliant. Okay, well that gives us a figure that we can work to and see whether individual teams are performing and what have you. But what we did see with this was the increase in the helpfulness of person, which for us is about back to that point of moving away from metrics of have you answered 30 phone calls a day? Yep. Have you helped customers today get the answers that they need, and to see that going up is what what that's all about.
And got them over the line. I mean, that effectively you're reducing the amount of hassle you'll have later on by having to go back and deal with an angry customer. So it has many benefits. Okay, we'll keep on going. We could do that for a while. I'm sure Nick's got some ideas. I'm sure you have too, Kuldip. But alongside consumer duty, what role do you see regulation playing in driving better communication practices and customer trust? And we'll have one more question after this. Just a quick one on consumer duty. We talked about it a little while ago, but how can regulation help? Dip. I mean, it's there for a reason. And as Paul said earlier on, consumer duty is kind of saying you must act on this now.
Yeah, I see the regulators as an ally. So they're good because for industries like Allianz Zurich, like we have been around for a really long time. I mean, when it comes to like policing the industry, they set the practice and they set the standard. So I see them as an ally. And, if someone, an insurance company is doing something that they see as this should be what common practice is. Yeah. I mean, they're really good at kind of setting that bar. So they're good at policing in the industry, and I see them as an ally.
It's definitely a relationship thing, isn't it? It needs to be a relationship thing. Time for one more question, I think. I'm going to throw it to you, Nick, but we'll see how we get on because, again, Nick hasn't seen these questions. So how are you, it says as insurers, but how are insurers mitigating or can they mitigate AI risks to avoid alienating customers? Look, as we bring in all of this new tech and the new ways of working and all of the checks on that has to have to be done, how do we reduce the risk that it will damage our relationship, it will damage what we do?
I mean, really good question. Again, I think it's technology, and of course I'm going to say this from a technology point of view. It's important that you are utilizing AI that is your company's own. So having the ability to plug in your own AI, your own company corporate instance, where you are policing those things. You're not putting out information to the wider world as such is really, really important. So again, looking at solutions that allow you to incorporate that, and then the context of all those actions that AI are helping you with are relative and relevant to your business, your existing landscape of information, and therefore can put you in a better position to be more relevant in terms of the way you tailor and tune the content and messaging of the communications you set out.
You spoke earlier on about, just literally reducing the amount of stuff you have to go through, and then the augmentation process with a human can now start to check the final product and make sure the wording is right, make sure the tone is right.
And speed up that process, because that's the key thing. It's fine if you left it to a human to do it. Yes, it might mean you're spending 10, 15 minutes on the communication. If you can drop that down to 2 or 3 and help answer more and more queries, get to more people, get all those processes moving along a lot faster, then of course that's a massive benefit to the perception of you being a responsive organization, to those customers.
And actually the AI is helping you to mitigate risk because it's dealing with a lot of the stuff that would have failure demand involved in it, and the humans would make mistakes. So it's reducing that, and then you can focus on the stuff that really matters.
The really good stuff,
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we have time for today. I hope you've enjoyed the last hour, that it's provided some really useful practical insights on improving your customer relationships by transforming communications and the technologies around it. Thanks very much for sending in your questions. We didn't quite have time to get through them all. Sorry about that. If you do have a couple of minutes before you leave us today and you haven't done it already, please do fill in that feedback form just below the video window on the webpage. We value your opinion. It's really important to us. So let us know what you thought of today's discussion and how we can keep on doing this better time by time. For now, that's all we have time for. It's been a fantastic hour. Thanks very much to our wonderful panelists. They've been great to have you with us. And of course, to you for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Do stay in touch with us here at Insurance Innovators, and we'll see you then. All the best. Take care.